Never Enough, and we wanted to open with a response to that title and what it represents for each artist. The second question, obviously, is just a short description, maybe, of our painting processes. The third question is, what projects we're all working on now or within the studio. And then the fourth is, if there was a pivotal moment that, led us to become an artist, to maybe discuss that a little. So each artist will present for approximately 12 minutes, and they'll discuss their work with some slides, and then we'll open it up to the floor and have an open conversation, hopefully. So we'll begin this evening with Melissa O'Flaherty, and if you'd like to open, please, the conveison with your response to the title.
Of course,
Enough is never enough.
Yes, of course, and thanks for having me here tonight. I smiled when I got the invite, and I loved the title because it just made me think about my own obsession that I have with art, and I think most artists and creative people feel this, that enough is never enough, and it becomes a kind of driving force, the motivation that we all have to make work. I think it's something I probably already had within me. As a child, I was fairly nurtured enough to encourage to make art, and I was lucky in that respect that my parents were very encouraging. I suppose it's again comes back to this. I have a curiosity about the world around me. I suppose it's my response, and it's a way of me to make sense of the world around me, is to create work, to make art. Sometimes it doesn't always work out. Sometimes there's fails, like every artist's experience. But then I think there's also successes or satisfaction. And I think if you can get to a place of satisfaction yourself, then that's a good accomplishment as an artist, just to really please yourself first, and then, and hopefully other people can respond to your work and get something from it also. So, I can start talking about some titles now, if that's okay. So I'm going to start with this piece here that's now showing is called Lucy's Flamingo. This was a piece of work that I made about a year ago. I was fortunate enough it was included in the RHA annual last year. I suppose for me, I've always had this interest in dreamlike, otherworldly, habitable places. Especially when we think about how unstable and how uncertain our own world is. I had been doing a lot of research into other worlds and this idea that there's worlds in space that possibly could be colonized eventually. I know it sounds very sci-fi, but I just like this idea that there's an optimism when we live in a very uncertain world. So I had made tons of drawings which expressed these ideas and looked into gases and plumes and smokes, and that's really all that was in those areas to work from, and that piece was created out of that research that I made. Also the idea of seeds and this idea of pods and regrowth and regeneration, so more positive messages are important to me. The next slide I think we have is Hecate. I'll pull that up in a sec. This is a piece we're going to look at next, which was created while I was on a residency. Again, I was very fortunate to be selected to go on a residency last summer by the RHA and the Notre Dame Global University, and they were kind enough to host Irish and American artists in Abbey, which is, I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, it's a magnificent scenic setting down in the west of Ireland. I was certainly influenced by the landscape down there, and it worked its way into some of the imagery, especially in Hecate. The title refers to this idea of the Greek goddess of mythology, who's associated with crossroads and entrances and exits. So if you think about that in relation to your own life, how we transition through different times in our lives, I thought that was an interesting concept to tie into the work Hecate. It's again otherworldly, so it's a little bit fantasy, it's a little bit dreamy. I suppose I'm drawn to that slightly more surreal type of art.
How did you find the residency there in Abbey?
we just felt so lucky. We were so well taken care of. It was like a gift. I don't know if you've experienced. Have you gone to residencies yourself, Sinead?
No, I've one or two, but I look at it, I'm just in awe of the building and
the building
landscape.
and the scenery and the landscape was incredible.
Yeah.
But I suppose the real gift has been given that time, that concentrated time to make art, and it's away from distractions of life. It's all you have to think is about how you can be very engaged in your practice. And I think I went in quite ambitious to that, and I brought down 2 huge blank canvases, thinking, holy God, they'll be looking at me, staring at me, these blank canvases. But I was able to focus, thank God, and there was a little bit of an audience there also. So I actually quite enjoyed that I wanted to show what my world looked like.
Yeah.
I wanted to create and kind of put into context, well, this is the work I'm making. So it was very satisfying to produce 2 paintings to quite large scale over 3 weeks, which previously I would have thought, no, not possible,
Yeah.
at a different pace of working, obviously. So residencies can be very useful in that regard. Yeah.
Well, you're just back from another one.
I am spoiled. I'm just back from the Tyrone Guthrie Centre, which is a real go-to place for me. It's based in County Monaghan. It's a wonderful artist retreat. If anybody gets the opportunity to go, I'd highly recommend it. It's not only for visual artists, it includes all arts disciplines, so creative practices, writers, poets. It's a very nurturing environment. Again, you come away with, after this concentrated time of work, just refreshed, and having had that time, it's so precious out of our everyday busy lives. You also get to collaborate with other people and to see the commonalities in other people's art forms, which is something I previously would not have experienced if I hadn't gone, and met writers and poets. And so it's a wonderful place, yeah. So
I wonder, do we do that enough, like collaborate enough? I did think tonight, though, this is a collaboration as such, just to bring people together. So
yes, definitely.
Common interests, but still very different.
Yeah, and common struggles.
Struggles, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I used to love Agnes Martin when she, there's a great tape on YouTube, and she's sitting there waiting for inspiration, and she says, what will I do next? And that's it. She's just waiting. She's tapping her foot for hours and waiting. Mm-hmm. And it always...
But have the time to do that, and it's a really precious thing. And appreciated, definitely, and supported by places like the Tyrone Guthrie Centre.
Especially when it's done professionally. I loved the title, though, Enough is Never Enough, because it's for me it's always about anticipation, what will happen next. Or if I complete a body work in the studio, I always decide to begin another canvas, and I almost begin a whole new project just to kind of make me return. So we have the images back now. So Melissa, you're on your second image.
So sorry about the little hiccup. So here we have Hecate, and as I said before, I won't go into too much again. This is a representation of different ideas, and I suppose another approach that is in my mind is to make it a kind of collage of ideas. So I've pulled different visual representations, like the seeded plant. The 3 figures are guarding, and the islands. So they are meant to be symbolic and meaningful in that way. So we might go to the next one there, Emma, thanks. So the title of this piece is All Sentient Beings, also created on the residency, and it's the second of the large pieces I worked on. I had this quote going around my head, which was, since birth, she has been instructed in the equal importance of all sentient beings. And it just really struck a chord with me as a mother, and that idea of motherhood, protection, and acceptance of all forms of nature, and however people are, we need to be open-minded. So I created this piece with that in mind. I suppose I would have used a few different, kind of more drawing reference. I've done a lot of life drawing. I've a strong interest in kind of surrealism, so I would do a lot of research into kind of surrealist imagery and also symbolic imagery. So, for example, in the bough above, there's a swaying branch with seeded, with cocoons that might contain seeds. So again, feeding into the motifs of my work of regeneration. So hopefully a more optimistic outlook on life. And it does, I think it's successful because it's a whole story, and I really enjoy myself when I go to look at other artists' work, when I'm allowed in to interpret a story. I think it's a good thing if your painting can have lots of open ways in for people to read them in multiple ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's that one. Might move on to the next demo, thanks. This again is a large piece. It measures 120 by 150 centimetres. This is for a body of work I'm currently working on for an upcoming show in the RHA in the Ashford Gallery, which is going to happen next year. Just due to COVID, like so many people, it was pushed back. But the idea in this piece of work is to try and convey this idea of reflective and nature and the symmetry of nature and how things can unfold. This nice mirroring effect, I've kind of used it as a kind of motif, as that maybe we would reflect ourselves on how we are. And in the center, there's a kind of a sensual kind of flowering opening, which of course would have connotations, especially if you're an admirer of Georgia O'Keeffe or ancient surrealism art, as I am. So it's meant to be quite a joyous piece and a celebration. So there's a lot of very swift gestural brush marks and a high tone kind of dual color palette. So that's that piece. This is a small piece made very recently, actually, during the, I hate to say it, the lockdown, but let's say the confinement of artists. And I had to leave my studio, and like most people, just work from home and adapt. So I actually had set up a small little studio. My studio was a cardboard box, which I unfolded and just stuck up on the wall. And it was more or less, damn it, I'm going to paint my way out of this. So this actually, interestingly, I had been having this kind of dialogue with myself and other artists about how much emotional involvement is needed. And I think I talked to you a little bit about this, Sinéad. But for this piece, it was very little emotional. It was more a reaction to my situation, and it was very liberating to just paint in a way that involved mark making and letting that show the way, guide the path for what the image was going to be. So it was nearly like an action painting, made very quickly over a day. I suppose for me, a lot of my work is carefully thought out, so it was lovely to adopt a different approach and let go and just really enjoy the mark making and paint making. So it's quite a small piece. I suppose what's interesting is that there's a lot of activation on the different layers of paint. So those larger blobs in the brighter colours is sitting on top of the surface are almost blotting out, and that again is more like a metaphor for there's the landscape but I'm not being able to get to it, or this way that I'm kind of taking away from the image below. So it's a piece that's kind of sparked a new direction in ways. I suppose I do enjoy working on lots of different ideas. I think that's just my personality, is that I'm interested in a lot of different subjects, matters, and that comes out in my painting. And then how I approach a painting can also affect, obviously, the outcome, visually, how it looks and the aesthetic, and, So, an interesting piece, and this notion of, as we did have a quick chat about this before, how much emotional engagement is necessary. Yeah.
You did look like you enjoyed making it, though.
I did, but somebody else said to me, "You look like you're really pissed off," And I was like, "Well, actually, I just really enjoy doing it because you can just let go, and it's nice to get back to, mark making." And I had done a lot of that, and I have done a lot of that in my drawing practice. And I'm actually part of a drawing collaborative called Drawing Decentered, and where we kind of, we work on drawing and question the ability of drawing, and that actually, what's possible with drawing, and that has really fed into my practice. this idea of making marks, and it's all helpful. It's all food. It's all ingredients in the soup of making art. So if I go to the next one there, that'd be great. The title of this is Male Hybrid. I suppose it's again made from a place of thinking about the hybridity in nature, a little bit more imaginary, half plant, half man. This figure, I suppose a reading would be he's stumbling out of the undergrowth. He has slightly menacing attitude, but then again, he might be a festival party goer or a pagan kind of figure. And I suppose, the approach for this was not a lot of planning went into it, but then I have to remember that, I probably have a conscious memory bank of experiences, of interests. So I suppose, I'm lucky then every now and again when I go to make a painting, I can draw from those. So even by beginning by making random paint marks, I can make decisions, I can have a conversation about shaping things with myself, and I'm able to react and make more of a rational sense out of mark making. So again, it's an interesting piece, I think.
Is it recent?
Yeah, it is. It's within the last 6 months. Yeah. So quite happy with that. And you can see, I suppose I've developed over time certain toolbox of how I use paint. So I'll use it quite thickly and opaque in some areas, and then I like to contrast that with maybe a more transparent, translucent area. So I think it's nice to have that kind of jump in planes for visual interest. And also, there's nothing like a nice gessoed canvas to work from. It's very satisfying, and it reflects the colours, and that is actually quite important to me. That because I love this jewel-like effect you can get from paint, and you want to get the most you can from your pigment. So this is just, I've worked on this for a few years, trying to figure out, what makes me happy. How can I get the most out of the paint and the material? So it's interesting, the possibilities.
Finding your voice.
Finding the voice, yeah. So we might move on to the next one. Thank you. This is what the studio wall looks like at the moment. This would be just an example of me working up ideas. You can see the little sketches to the side. Sometimes they're quite cartoonish, and they're really just thumbnails nearly, and they could sit there for a while just to resonate. And that is on one side of the studio, and then there's another few paintings on the other side. So, it's nice to just sit with ideas. You can see a smaller little painting there. I think we have a close-up of that coming up, of the scarecrows. Again, this idea of paganism, and they have a kind of a zombie quality to them, which I quite like. And then on the right, we have this bird-like female who is almost transforming before our eyes. She's feathery, and but she's also, she's half animal, half human, and it's just, again, a little bit of fantasy, but it also just feeds into my interests, of surrealism and kind of a little bit of symbolic meaning. So we go to the next one, that'd be great. And that's just a close-up, and you can see the brush mark is quite defined in that. So I suppose that was painted with real intent, and I think that's important sometimes, that you really put your mark down to describe what you want to say and convey. So so that's that one, and we might move on then. So the title of this work is Femme Enfant. She appears as a lumbering figure, lumbering through the undergrowth. Again, this goes back to, I've been doing a lot of research in women in surrealism, and it was really just, the painting was made as a kind of a comment about how a lot of women in surrealism in the past were viewed merely as muses or mistresses, or but actually they're artists in their own right, and they weren't really fully recognised. And I think now they are becoming more recognised. The retrospectives are popping up around in all the museums in the world. So my idea was just to take a classic studio model pose, and again I do a lot of life drawing as well, and to really turn that on its head and to nearly throw it back as a kind of beautiful, grotesque image. So I suppose in a way she's kind of weaponizing her identity, and the holes are a motif for me of, this kind of invisibility, or this idea that, not men also and women, but carry around holes within them, and they're just representative of maybe some pain or interior psyche. So, and then it's married with this kind of celebration of nature. And I guess the gesture she's taking is quite proud and monumental. So that was very important to me, that, this is not, even though this is somebody who looks afflicted, they're not behaving that way. So symbolism again coming into play. Might move to the next one, thanks Emma. This is now, the next few slides are done in the recent residency down at Tyrone Guthrie Centre. I had a week, and a week is a very short time in the space of making oil paintings. So I decided to really try and expand the motif of this character. And it occurred to me to take her and maybe play her out in different settings. And wouldn't it be fun to let her loose in the world? So her first place she goes to the supermarket. But I liked this idea. A little bit of humour, and also this kind of like the voyeurism type aspect, that, she's just going to do everyday things, because that's what most people do. They have to carry on. But yeah, so I think it feels a little bit pop arty, and I actually have been looking at a lot of Edward Hopper paintings as well, and how he treated the figure, and it was quite interesting how he creates a distance, and I was trying to explore that. So we might go to the next one then, Emma, thanks.
You just have to watch the time now for Chanelle.
Yeah, I will finish up now. And this is just a second image playing on that motif. So doing a very everyday activity, going for a swim, and it's no bother. So there's a little bit of a reference to David Hockney in the pools too. I really admire him. So. So that, again, those are just preliminary studies, and sometimes they might be repainted, because sometimes I do paint things 2 or 3 times, and it's amazing you can get different responses from doing reiterations of a painting. So, yeah.
It's fascinating to see it all in 12 slides.
Yeah,
just
that's
a good selection too.
Okay, great, yeah. So
now
there we go.
Chanelle, would you like to present some images, please? Thank you, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa. That was amazing. And it's kind of nice to be able to look at the audience and the screen. And all of you, I kind of wish my eyes went around my head a bit better. Okay, will I get going? I am going to read a fair bit off my notes. But I did want to just start by thanking the Mermaid and the technicians for setting us all up today, and congratulate Sinead on her beautiful show upstairs. Yeah. It's gorgeous. So Emma, if you just want to go to the first slide, I'm going to just introduce myself. Okay. So just a bit about my background. I graduated from NCAD painting in 2010, and over the years I've exhibited widely in Ireland, and from 2017 to 2019 I took the Terps Banana correspondence course with Terps Banana Art School in London, which is kind of like an online mentorship program, and I decided to take it just to kind of get another boost of energy into the painting and have a tutor. So natural forms, artifacts and museum objects are often the starting points to my work. Over the years I have looked at human bones and animal bones, organs, specifically the heart, the lungs, the brain, as well as landscape, flowers and horizon lines. If you want to go to the next slide, please. From an early age, I was fascinated with museum objects from the Bronze Age and Stone Age, etc., particularly the bog bodies. The idea that a treasure could be dug up was interesting to me. The treasures were there all this time in the ground, but we couldn't see them and we didn't know about them. When writing about my work, Rachel McIntyre from the Douglas Hyde Gallery wrote, "In Irish tradition, where the keenness of one's physical connection to the natural world is assumed, a pisog is a piece of organic material left to decay on a person's land as a means of bringing them misfortune. Semantically, the word is linked to the female body and likely expresses the fear and suspicion attached to the power of women's sexuality and generative strength. The remedy for such afflictions involved the burial of the offending object and the elimination of its negative charge with prayer and holy water. By upholding the value of bold engagement with nature and interiority, Chanelle Walshe's paintings deny such prudish and conservative sublimations, while acknowledging and respecting the potential force of certain powers beyond our comprehension. In a world where boundaries, borders, territory, and opinions are often hastily drawn and unyieldingly rigid, there is something captivating about the expansive and fluid logic from which her works emerge." So I'm just going to talk about this piece here. It's called Hope for Tomorrow, and it's Oil on Board. It's a piece that is an abstract representation of a human lung. Around 2015 to 2016, I was regularly making drawings of lung and heart specimens at the Royal College of Surgeons in Dublin. To hold the lungs in my hands, knowing they belonged to a family, knowing that they had been unearthed, removed from someone, was a profound and humbling experience. I would place the specimens in trays and draw for hours, thus starting a series of tasks. So my series of tasks is investigative research through drawing, the isolation of a form, playing with light, colour and structure, and finally the construction of a painted image. So Emma, I'm just going to ask you to go through kind of the next maybe 2 or 3 slides, and so that the following paintings are from this series of work from this time. Kind of 2015 up to maybe 2017 I was doing these, and they are depictions of human organs. So if you want to go to the next one, Emma. Yeah, we can stop on this one. So this is a drawing, and it would have been, I would have made it directly in front of the heart specimens at the College of Surgeons. So I just want to dwell on this idea of construction in relation to painting. To me, my research drawings are a strong foundation for my paintings, and the more time I invest in that foundation, the more confident I am when it comes to painting. So the painting is built from the drawing. It's also interesting to think of painting as a verb. The painter Elaine de Kooning once said, "A painting to me is primarily a verb, not a noun, an event first and only secondarily an image." So for me, that construction and using paint, it relates to not fully knowing how the paint will land on the canvas. Emma, if you want to go to the next slide, please. And the next one, please. Thanks. So I'm just going to address one of the questions that we were given was about a pivotal moment in our art lives, if you like, about like why we would decide to become an artist, or something that really changed our thinking about making art. And for me, it's the making of this painting. So this painting is called Avernus, and I made it in 2012. The making of this painting was a pivotal moment for me as a painter. After months of drawing from pelvic bones at the Natural History Museum, when it was made, I finally felt like I was going in the right direction, and my method of research drawing as a foundation was working. So Emma, if you could just go to the next slide. The next couple of slides are, I was looking at brain specimens, so these works are a little later. They're more like 2018, 2019. You can go to the next one, please. And one more, I think. So they are all oil on board, and they're a little smaller. They're kind of, the first two were 35 centimeters, and this one's actually quite large. It's 1 meter by 80 centimeters, and this one is oil on canvas. And I kind of took a little bit of a step forward with this piece because I used the paint in a much heavier way. And the title of this piece is called Sun. And Emma, if you could go to the next one, you'll get I think, a detail shot. Yeah. So you can just leave it there for the minute. So these paintings are from 2018 to 2020. And my colour palette changed, and the way I was using paint changed a little bit with the help of my tutors from Terps Banana, because that was a goal that I discussed with them. I made a conscious decision to move my colour palette away from earthy tones and towards brighter whites, yellows, pinks and greys. Research drawings were made from brain specimens at the Berlin Museum of Medical History. Paintings of specimens are not necessarily about an accurate description of the organ, but more about honouring them as beautiful objects and translating my experience of them. So I'm just going to now respond to the title of this evening's talk, Enough is Never Enough. In 1995, my father, Lorcan Walshe, who is also a painter, unveiled a large painting at Warrington Hospital to honour Bronwyn Vickers, a young mother who died as a result of the 1993 Warrington bombings. My father's painting is an interpretation of a painting that I had made as a child. Our paintings were jointly titled Sun Behind the Cloud, and mine is displayed next to Dad's painting in the hospital. At the launch, a journalist was taking notes, and my 7-year-old self decided to inform him that I too was an artist, and this was just one of my paintings and that there would be more to come. So I must have known back then that that one painting was really, I wanted him to know that there would be more. My paintings have been on a very long journey before they reached the clean white walls, gallery walls. They have been wiped away in frustration after a full day's work, only to be started up again the following morning as if nothing had ever happened. They have been turned upside down, fallen off the wall, or had flies get stuck in their wet paint. However, once they are on a gallery wall, I tend to detach from them, and I am already thinking about the next project and the next show. Painting never ends, and I will never get enough days in the studio. Enough is never enough relates to an artist's life's work. After a life spent painting and 43 years growing and maintaining a large flower garden on the grounds of his home in Giverny, France, Claude Monet, at the age of 86, said that his garden was his most beautiful masterpiece, perhaps feeling that in this lifetime he would never make enough paintings. So Emma, if you could go to the next slide, please. So the next few slides are just the work that I'm working on at the moment. So when COVID kind of set in, I started to paint flowers. And this piece is just a work in progress. So it kind of shows the start of a painting where there's actually a drawing first and a light background colour, and then the paint starts to go down and build up. And I'll push colours back and forth as I'm making them. I do work a bit slowly. So this, I kind of just wanted to give you an idea of what's underneath the finished product. If you could go to the next slide, please. And the next one, please. So I'm just going to wrap up now, and this piece here is actually my most recent piece. It's barely dry. So I have always had an interest in flowers and gardens. For years I have thought about working from flowers. It took a global pandemic for me to sit still and pursue this. I see flowers as a temporary, beautiful object, the stem as their spine, the petals acting as a protective outer layer. I hope for this new work to develop into a long-term project, which may be less about flowers and more about beautiful forms which are slowly returning to the earth. And I'd like to end with a quote by the abstract expressionist painter Joan Mitchell. She said, "My paintings are titled after they are finished. I paint from remembered landscapes that I carry with me and remembered feelings of them, which of course become transformed. I could certainly never mirror nature. I would more like to paint what it leaves with me." So I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Chanelle.
Thanks, Chanelle.
So, Joanne, would you like to present some images first?
Yes. Yeah, hi everyone. It's strange not to be able to see more people when you're speaking, but also nice and intimate and lovely to know that there's people watching online. I'm starting with this image, which is an old image. I don't know if I can be heard properly. And it's of exploring bitumen and exploring paint and the whole viscosity of paint through this, fairly kind of crude but yet very, very elegant in its essence. My original idea was to get clear bitumen, which you can get, and pigment it and work that way. But when I saw the black, it was completely mesmerizing as a color. So yeah, I might just go on to the next image, Emma, if you don't mind. So the work, this is titled Pour, and it was like a moving sculptural painting is how it came about at the time. And it began like a little performance, so it poured very, very slowly out of the pot onto the floor or onto gallery walls. I've done it in a few different settings. And each time it was something about the almost magical quality. A few people have mentioned the word pagan as well as we've been going around, something about that almost very dark, otherworldly type of complete fascination and magic, and this piece really began to allow me explore that. And the title Enough is Never Enough as well for me was kind of it kind of was also about the constraints that painting brings, the constraints of the medium, the constraints of the surface, of the boundaries of the surface, and how that is that there's something helpful for me as a painter to work within a certain amount of constraint. When what it is, or the subject matter, or the thing that I'm painting feels very unboundaried and unwieldy. I don't know where to be looking out, here or here or here. But anyway, or here.
All good. all good.
I'm like, where am I? In the black. But so that sort of, that's kind of, enough is never enough. And also it highlighting, the process as well, like the actual, it's the returning of the enough is never enough that, keeps me coming back as a painter, and keeps me specifically coming back to paint. So I might just move on. I do actually have paintings to show. So that's just a close-up image of the bitumen, and that is I've also shown it as a video piece where it moves very slowly, so it has a very meditative quality to it when it's being viewed as well, and looking at it when you're in person. what do I want to say about that? Yeah, it's something about, it's just another way. I'm always trying to find a way to, articulate something that, it doesn't feel like it's the everyday, but yet it lives alongside the everyday, and it's hard to, so, I switch a little bit between, medium and what material I use in order, what expresses that as well as I can when I can't at all. It's a hopeless game, but I attempt it, and attempt that sort of dialogue, all the time, keep returning back to that. So we might just move on. Yeah, so this is actually something that I'm working on at the moment, and hasn't, I'm working on, that's in my studio at the moment, and it's sort of beginning to look at line, along with the bitumen. I did an awful lot of drawing and line drawings, and this is actually paint, this is oil paint on linen, but it's looking at sort of, I'm calling them map maker, and I'm looking at physical landscapes and geology and, fold mountains and different, aspects of that kind of earth, or that earth sort of pulse, and, how, I begin to articulate something that I'm not. So I'm not trying to represent any of the mountains particularly, but, what it is that is held within that surface behind it, what that represents. So these are sort of the beginnings of looking at those. And the next piece will be a surprise. So this is so this is quite a small painting, and actually was done. It's called Isola 2000, which is a small ski resort in France. And when I was traveling there, I had been going up through this really big ravine that had all these incredible mountains and fold mountains, and it was very, very narrow, and it reminded me of my drawings, and it reminded me of the bitumen and the geology, and so this was a painting in response to that. So it's quite small, but very dear to me. The next one will be another surprise. Oh yeah, so this is just beginning to look at, I'm very interested in, paint in terms of, movement, and also looking at anatomy. I have looked at, done quite a research into anatomy as well, and been in the College of Surgeons, not quite alongside Chanelle, but tag teaming. Yeah, I wasn't far behind. And what I was really interested in looking at actually were systems within the body, and very, very thin membranes, which when I got in and was very, very kindly let in, that what I wanted to look at was sort of invisible. It was completely invisible actually. There was a thing called pia mater and arachnoid matter, and there was another one, can't remember now, but they were all these beautiful, beautiful words that were tender mother and spider mother, and there was another one, I can't remember how, but anyway, they coat the nervous system. So I was looking at the nervous system and the brain and all down the spine and all of these, sort of beautiful images. So I ended up, but again, it kind of related back to that sort of, the thing that I'm after, is it's hard to pin down. It's not, and it's somehow for me as a human or as a painter, it is, and back to that other question of why, what was the pivotal moment? I don't know if it had so much a pivotal moment, but I remember it kind of hitting home that, the word artist was the closest I could get to that might sort of articulate something that I did, and not that wasn't, it was always related to a material, which was paint, but it was something about trying to find a structure and a container that also just that could articulate something else that I was trying to express, and you know, there's a lot of artists that, you know, particularly a lot of female painters that, you know, I'm hearing about more recently now, all whose names will leave my brain now. But anyway, there's Ithel Cahoon, I think. I'm not sure how to pronounce her name, but she's really exciting. You know, she's dead. But, you know, just a lot of sort of, you know, different ways of approaching the work and of approaching it with... oh, we could probably move on. Sorry, I'm forgetting that I've these. Yes, this was in, it's called Annie, for Annie Albers, and it was, you know, just that whole sense of, you know, some of those female painters and artists and weavers and, you know, that were, yeah, were definitely hidden from history and weren't, you know, are beginning to come now into their own, which is amazing. You know, not in their own, they're incredible, but like are getting much more, you know, and I think it just feels really important, you know, to be okay to be, you know, of a gender and, you know, yeah, and, you know, really admiring the work of, you know, other artists that have gone by. So it was to do with her weavings and her beautiful, really intricate weavings. I'm not sure what else I have, sure, we'll see. Yeah, this is from my recent show in 2019, a year ago, almost to the day, here in Mermaid, and this was quite a big piece, and it was called The Psychiatrist's House, and what I was interested in, I did it with a few of the pieces where I just hung them from the ceiling, and you know, so they had a sense of sort of billowing, or, you know, almost like being flags, you know, like that expression of whatever it's called, you know, like raising your flag, or you know, like your colours or your
banner, really.
Yeah, your banner. Yeah, something like that, you know, that, and all tied into that sort of permission around mark making and permission. You know, really looking at the, you know, the fine line between, you know, obviously, you know, as a painter and, you know, an artist who's come through college, you know, I'm looking at a painting in a particular way all the time when I'm making it. You know, I'm all the time, you know, judging it and seeing if it's hitting a certain mark. But alongside that, I'm with these works, I was trying to really pull back on a very, very strong editor, you know, a very strong edit that would, you know, had a whole like list of rules. I started writing out a list of rules that I should probably break in painting. So that was one. What else have I got? Yeah, this was another big piece. I probably won't stay too long because we're probably running out of time, but this is a big piece. I called it 7 Hearts in a Bag. And a curator came to, I won't say who, came to my studio and said, you should have called that one The Fight. You know, and it
Say it again?
I should have called it The Fight.
Oh.
And it was true, you know, and it was an interesting comment on the sort of, you know, it was a very big piece. It was 165 centimetres squared, and that was big for me. And it was a big leap up to sort of attack a painting that size. So. What else have I got? Yeah, this is was a smaller one called Initiation, and was really the title of the show. And yeah, it was just, I mean, a lot of, you can see the scraping back and underpainting and underdrawing that I do, you know, where I apply heavily and scrape back. And, you know, it was done in IADT, where I did my degree, where they very kindly put us up in summer studios. So I had an absolute ball up in the painting studio for a whole summer. So that was done there, and this was also in the recent show. I think I'll probably just have one more. Maybe not. Oh, no, I'm someone else.
Sorry.
That's fine. There's another one, but that's fine.
Sorry, that was when you wanted to pause it.
Yeah, and just like that, Emma Roche has introduced herself. Yeah.
Thanks.
Sorry, Joanne. Thank you.
I'm being blunt just to keep time, so
Yeah, go.
apologies, and then we'll come back to.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no
Okay,
problem.
Okay, Emma.
Thanks for having us, Sinead.
Oh, it's great
Very
to see
generous.
everybody. It really is.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's lovely.
So I suppose hello everyone. Thanks for coming as well. It's really nice to see people in real life. The enough is never enough question just made me think about time a lot. So, and always wanting more time in the studio, and that kind of battle between having time in the studio and kind of competition between my studio work and work that pays the bills, and when I'm outside of the studio always wanting to get back in. And those ideas kind of came into my paintings in a really literal way as kind of a mode of survival a few years ago, so it's something that I kind of think about all the time. But it also made me think about how greedy I am with materials, and ways of working, I suppose, as well. Just that I'm never really happy working just on one painting. Kind of want to be working on a few at a time. I'm never really happy with just one method of painting. I don't really feel excited if I'm just working on one, I suppose. And then it also made me think about the first kind of layers, that they're never really enough, like the first marks and the first, I suppose the first painting that comes onto the canvas is always destroyed by me. So underneath, like, what kind of can be perceived as a very kind of simple form at the end of, or what I see as a finished painting, underneath that there's a lot of kind of refusal and rejection and destroyed older paintings, I suppose. It's interesting to think about. That the first ones are never good enough for enough, I suppose. That's the thing that I was thinking about. But then just supposed to look at some of my processes. These are knitted paintings. So I use a syringe in the studio and line out paint, acrylic paint. And then once it's dry, I kind of use it as you would wool or thread. So I made the first one in 2005, a really small piece in NCAD when I was there as a student. And kind of my main focus is to kind of make a new painting, or something that was new, or like a hybrid between 2 and 3 dimension maybe. It's kind of moved on from that a little bit now, and become something that's quite everyday nearly, because it's something that I engage with every day. But so that one is called Out of Sorts. This is one in process. It's about 3 years old, and it was called Pucker Slave. So this is it on the studio table, near enough completion. So if you can see the outside, the parameter of it, it's the paint is lined out with the syringe, waiting to dry, and then I use it to make the painting afterwards. Is it finished? It was part of a show in Terps Gallery called Women Can't Paint, in 2018, I think. That painting was in the same show, and it's called Mother Blue. It was the first one I made with any kind of figure development. So up until that, they were all very abstract. That was the first one to put some kind of figure in it. And this is quite a large painting made around the same time. It was about just over 1.5 meters. And there's a stretcher frame underneath the very top of the painting, and the rest is kind of knitted and braided. And then I had made a kind of a makeshift loom on my studio table, so then it kind of spilled down onto the floor. Sorry, these are details. There's no. Quite dark. This is just my studio table when I'm making the thread, the paint, drying before I use it.
How long does that take roughly?
About 2 weeks. So it will take. I just spent a week in the Cowhouse Studios in Wexford, and I just did that. That was the only thing that it was line out paint for the full week. which was really helpful because when I came home, then I can use it. But it takes about, they were kind of skinnier. The thicker threads are about 2 weeks. The skinnier ones, maybe 2 or 3 days.
And how strong are they to use when you use
They're
them?
really, it's taken a while to get them to a point where I've kind of got the formula pretty bang on it. So they're not breaking. At the beginning when I made it first, it was every 4 stitches would break. But
Time-wise,
yeah,
how long did that take? Like,
few years.
yeah.
Like I have some images of paintings that I make in between making this kind of work, because I think otherwise I would have completely lost my mind. No needles. Yeah.
And are you making your own formula? Like, it's not just directly from the tube of paint?
I'm using some medium, but then if I can't really use any the paint. They have to be really good quality acrylic paint, and then it works quite well.
Okay.
Some colours don't. White is really
The
really annoying.
pigment,
It can be really
yeah.
brittle.
Yeah.
But I've got kind of good mediums on the go, so just the whites come. But white was the most difficult one to kind of get right. This is a little bit of an older piece, and it's acrylic paint on stretcher wood. So I was interested in making a painting without any canvas, and that wasn't in the format of the painting, I suppose. And that's a piece from a similar time as well. And I was looking at a lot of puppetry. This one's called A Daughter for Artaud. So it's kind of quite a dark piece, but it's stretcher wood at the top and bottom and acrylic in the middle. Oh yeah, so then just thinking about the kind of the competition between the studio and jobs, because a lot of the knitted work was quite labour intensive, and I really needed to focus the time. Like, it really needed to be kind of nearly like a full-time job. But I needed to be able to feed myself, so I needed a job outside. So I started thinking of, I was really obsessed with kind of having to leave, and I started making these paintings about jobs that I had that I didn't like, or that I wasn't happy in, and took those ideas into the studio, I suppose. So like kind of my personal experiences of part-time pro rata work and untoward labour practices and bosses and colleagues, and it kind of gave me an in to kind of be I suppose like ridiculous situations in the workplace, and kind of a healthy disrespect for authority. It kind of allowed that as well, which was really nice. And kind of there were a lot of them were very self-deprecating, because they were like, I'm in them a lot, I think. So this one's called Is There Anything Else I Can Help You With? And it was I worked in a call centre for 1 year and 13 days, and at the end of every call you had to say, is there anything else I can help you with? And I had usually never helped them, so they this one's called Part-Time Pro Rata 2. There was a series of part-time pro rata jobs. So that was a 5-star golf course where I got to bring the golfers back and forth from the hotel to the golf course. It's a joy. There are oil on different kinds of canvas. So there's some oil on linen and some on cotton over board, so I'll always have board on. This one's called Boss Man. And this one's called Unqualified. I had a job for 6 months as a music teacher in a school for 2 guys who had been kicked out of their music class. I never studied music before, so they were doing they passed their junior cert, so it was really good. This is a hard one to explain. So it's oil on linen union over board. It's quite small as well, 20 centimetres by 17 and a half, I think. And I have worked in the last 10 years in quite a religious school. I teach there now, but when I started first, I was working as a kind of a dean of, like, I was in charge of discipline, and I had an office, and I was in charge of their trips and stuff. And they used to go on all these international trips, but there was emails going back and forth from 2 of the nuns and myself. They wanted to bring the kids to a pro-life march. And I kind of keep saying, no, I don't think it's a good idea, and try and not get myself fired for my real reasons for not wanting them to go. But at the end of all of the emails, they would write, count on my prayers. There was always this line of count on my prayers. And eventually, when they agreed they wouldn't go to the march, they put in a typo at the end, which was count on my prayers, but they forgot the O in count. It was really, so this one's called Counting. It's one of my favourite.
I love the humour.
It's part of the Wexford County Council collection.
They're so lucky.
Yeah.
You have to laugh.
This one is from the same school, so it's the first boss I had when I was in this job, and she was a really impressive person. Like, she was a Star Wars fan, and she used to go around the school on, Joanne, you probably met her, did you? On rollerblades, and she spoke 7 languages. She was just this really impressive person. And her art history was incredible. She had this huge knowledge of art history and everything. But the painting is called Pure Love. I kind of was a little bit wary of her because she was very, very persuasive. So I was just a little bit concerned about being evangelized. You know, you're like, this could actually happen. But I found a book in the library then that was called Pure Love, which is geared toward sex education for teenagers, and it's the most homophobic, misogynistic, awful piece of writing I've ever come across. So I just titled it that as a kind of reminder to.
What kind of size is that one?
20
Scale?
centimetres by 17 and a half.
Okay.
Most of these are, yeah. So then that was made in the same, it's the same kind of theme, I suppose, but it's 2 and a bit metres by 1 metre, and it's knitted acrylic on rug canvas. That was part of Carlow Visual, the open submission show last year as part of Carlow Arts Festival. And that was called Pure Love None Boss. That's just a detail of how it was made. And that's the beginning. So the drawing that's at the front, I do a lot of kind of pencil drawings on graph paper before I make the knitted paintings. They don't always manifest into it, but sometimes they do. This was a painting I made for a portrait prize, a kind of in London last year, and it was called Plaster Saint, self-portrait. And Plaster Saint is it's a urban slang for hypocrite, so it was kind of about having my job in the school as well. Sorry, it's also knitted acrylic on rug canvas. This is a painting, one of the first ones I made during lockdown. There was a week or 2 where I wasn't able to get materials, so I was using kind of leftovers in the studio, and it's the first time I've used the knitted acrylic with it on top of an oil paint, or they were kind of combined the 2 together. So it's called Strike. It's in the sky is blue in Carlow Visual at the moment. That was made around the same time, and it's called Homeschooler. That was my job. These are just some of the drawings I made during residency in Cowhouse Studios. Toward a longer piece, it's about 25 centimetres tall, and then I'm hoping to just keep making it for a year kind of and see how long I can see how it evolves just in terms of what this is started. It's just an image from my studio table.
So are they kind of like studies for bigger ones? Like you might do a small one and then decide to go much bigger with it?
When I do the paintings on the raw canvas, I kind of use the canvas as a pattern to follow. So usually they just become that size.
Okay.
But some of the smaller oil paintings are probably studies for bigger ones, or possibly studies for bigger ones, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
This one is called Explain It to Me Slowly, and it was made last week. And that one is called Overseer, and it was also made last week. So it's oil on cotton overboard as well. I think that's it. Did I answer any of your questions?
What do you think, Melissa? I think all of them.
All of them.
That slowed me right down, actually. I just thought everything's fast at the moment, fast track. Everything has to be delivered quickly, and like painting slows me down, and that's what I love. The contemplation and you know, how the studio becomes an anchor, and then that's it. Just brings us all back down to it. And what are you all working on now then? So Melissa, what are you working on now?
I've got a couple of things on the go. I suppose a bit like Emma, I find I need one or two things happening simultaneously. So I'm looking at, still working on a body of work for this idea of nature, nostalgia, kind of look back at nature and trying to depict it in alternative ways, alternative to historical art references of nature where everything was glorious and fabulous and God was in all nature, but you know, it's not really true anymore. You know, I think that myth is being dispelled with everything that's happening in the world. So yeah, working on that, and then I'll also work on kind of very unemotional, as I showed some of the work, very much like rapid mark making type of work, where I'm just trying to draw on a kind of a memory bank of experiences and memories. So two different types of approaches happening. And what normally happens for me is I end up gathering the different ones into groups, and then they become a series. So eventually, out of working in all these different ways, things do naturally or organically kind of group together and become their own little story, you know, or series. So that's kind of what I'm at the moment.
Chanelle, you were asking, where will we all be in 20 years?
Oh, yeah.
God, I dread to think. It's a big
Well,
question.
I asked you that question at your talk in the lab, and it was pretty awkward, wasn't it? No one could answer.
I wasn't paying attention anyway.
Well, you answered, and you just said that you wanted to be making really big work, like, and
Yeah.
I suppose upstairs kind of proves that you are.
Yeah. And what are you working on now, Chanelle?
Well, I'm looking at flowers, but not. I don't want to look at them as if they're flowers. You know, I just want to see them as like these sculptures, these forms. So I think because I'm at the beginning, when I paint them, maybe they do look like flowers. But I'm hoping that in a while, they won't really be about flowers. But I am kind of toying with sculpture, and it's so new that I don't know how to talk about it. But it's just that to kind of get my hands on something again, on material to hold something. Because I haven't been in a lab, in a science lab in quite a while. And that was really the basis of all the other work, was that it was fueled by an experience of holding a form, whereas I can't really do that now. So I think for me to just play with material, whether it becomes an art form or not, but it's to kind of bring myself to have those experiences again. So that's kind of where I'm at, and I want to go bigger as well. I'm still kind of on the 1 meter canvases, but my head is starting to think about like diptych and triptych as well. So I think that could be a good stepping
ambitious.
stone. Yeah, yeah.
And Joanne, what's your
Yeah, I think
day-to-day like now?
you know, I suppose a lot of the, kind of geological and line and, connecting with a different environment. I think over this time, because before this lockdown happened, getting to the studio was like the ultimate goal most days, to get away from everything. And then in the time where, I've had a lot of getting away from everything, I kind of have quite a need to, connect with something and connect with something that's soothing, which the studio is, which paint is, like that slowing down, it is that same thing, but also somehow branching out a little bit more into the, I don't know, the natural world. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. I'm looking at, painting. I mean, over the period I painted outside, which was really unusual, just because I couldn't get to my studio, and I'd nowhere else to do it. So, but yeah, that's kind of what I'm looking at. I've been looking at West Cork and, Beara Peninsula and different sort of, geographical areas like that, and, continuing or revisiting kind of a body of work and finishing it that relates to that.
Yeah, and Emma, you finished your residency, haven't you, in Cowhouse?
Yeah, it was just a week at the end.
Okay.
Yeah, it was incredible. You deserve all the prizes. Frank. It's just a really amazing place. The food is amazing. Amazing.
And just the concentrated time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and not
Yeah.
to have no other kind of commitments or something. But yeah, I'm working with another artist called Kira Roche. We're going to have a 2-person show in Wexford Arts Centre next summer. It's really exciting to be working with somebody toward that. And then a show in the Complex in the end of next year, hopefully. The world isn't falling apart.
And where can audiences see work now? Melissa, you're exhibiting, aren't you?
Yeah, not until next year for the painting, but I have a piece in a group show with drawing decentered, and it's in Ennistein Courthouse. So if anybody wants to make the trip, but actually we're just produced a video, so we'll be online where you can have a look at that website. You'll see the participating artists. It's a collaborative of 6 artists, and it's been very interesting, very rewarding, kind of dynamic to work. And again, like a collaboration, I think can really push you out of your comfort zone and challenge you in new ways. So it's quite a healthy thing to do, I think, as an artist. Yeah. So.
And you're preparing for your solo exhibition in the Ashford Gallery in the Royal Academy.
I am, yes, and that is scheduled for this time next year.
Okay.
So there's a wee bit of time there to make them fantastic pieces of art. But no, I'm glad of the time now. I think, like most artists, we were delayed with COVID, and everything seems to have stopped in ways. But now I feel like that time could be really precious and really great for the work. So I'm quite happy all around the situation there. Yeah, very happy.
And Joanne and Chanelle, are you exhibiting at the moment or preparing to exhibit?
No. No, I'm not at the moment. No, I'm not in anything at the moment. I mean, no. A lot of things just stopped and went on, during this whole period. So, even emails and, having visits to the studio, all of that. So I'm back in that process of just seeing what's around.
I have a show that's online with the Grunwald Gallery, which is a kind of a public art centre on the campus of the University of Indiana. And they asked a lot of artists to I suppose, submit images, and then there's you can go through all the images of every artist, and then under each artist page there's a couple of questions. So it's just a kind of short interview, but it really relates to COVID and how the artists managed to make work during COVID. But it's actually quite an interesting web page, because a lot of artists submitted their studio spaces, and some, because their studio buildings might have closed down, they just had to turn like a bedroom or even like a utility room into their studio. So it's kind of interesting to get that insight. So that might just be something interesting for people to look up, you know.
And we all have Instagram accounts. And
Yes.
Yep.
yes,
Hashtags.
hashtag everything.
Yeah.
But thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I really appreciate the Mermaid Arts Centre and all the work they've done to host us. So many, many thanks. And hopefully
And
see
to
you all
everyone
soon.
watching online as well.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
And who's here. Thank you.
Yeah. And Owen, thanks again.
Thanks, Owen.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Joanna. I
Thank you,
agree.
Joanna.
Like,
Thanks,
I really enjoyed it, and I was thinking, God, I could just keep looking at the images, you know, silently.
Yeah,
It's just
or talk
gorgeous.
more. Yeah.
Absolutely
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joanna.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, sometimes the activism occurs in the discussion. Like painting is so solitary, and a lot of the time we're making it and we don't really know what it's about until kind of later. I think really like the job of an artist is to start the conversation. Some will wave flags and make banners, and some won't. But certainly to kind of to put the images out there and be willing to discuss them, and to be willing to be opinionated as well. It is a form of activism, but I guess, I mean, it goes in an arc of how extreme do we want to go, and I think that can depend on personalities as well, because many artists are quite kind of solitary, reclusive people, and we need other personalities to help us. So it just becomes a team effort then. A lot of it happened in the Repeal the Eighth movement. Many artists made images relating to it, which just, you know, we could talk about it all night really, but that's just one example. I don't know if that really answers your question.
I thought that'd be relevant to you, Joanne, in one way.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose, do I need this still? Yeah, I suppose it is kind of, it is interesting, how what you do in the studio branches out into, I don't know what the right word is, but into, meaning or effect, or where it becomes, it goes into a different vein, a different thread of, expression or existence. I think over this period, I certainly have, what has become most relevant, you know, in general as a human, has been other humans and connection with them, and making sure that we don't lose that, you know. You know, the virus is the virus, but, you know, people's mental health is way more important, I think, and that's very much on the edge for people at the moment. You know, it's very strange times, and I think, you know, I have a tool, like I have something that I do that self-soothes me in that way. You know, I can go, not that I don't mean to make out that the studio is always a soothing place, it's not at all for me, but it's, you know, it is still somewhere that I can go and process and try and articulate something, you know, and, you know, yeah, it's just really important. It's really important in times like this when we can only have this many people in here. You know, like art, culture in general is just, you know, I've never felt it more strongly how vital it is, you know, and how, you know, this is really important, you know, meeting here is really important, you know, having people come, go into the studio making work is really, really, really important. You know, that really upsetting, whatever it was, thing they did in The Guardian where like the least important job was artist, when they did some survey. And, you know, it was just like, there's something very wrong, you know, because it is a very part of our, like the contemplative, reflective nature of humans, you know, that we do. People go away and make work and come and show work and share it. It's so important. So I don't know what else to do about that at the moment in terms of, you know, our human family, but I think something needs to happen, all right, you know. I'll just keep making work and see what happens, see what comes out of that. Thanks, good question.
Are there any other questions?
Yes, I did it for 3 years too, yeah.
I
And
did that
Melissa.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Bananas everywhere.
My invites.
Actually, I had a banana before I came.
Bananas all around. Yeah.
I've become an honorary member.
Yeah, I mean, I can start that off. I find it very good. I've been doing a mentorship program with them for 2 years. I think it's definitely been a very supportive environment. I think it's you know, it's a kind of a challenging environment as well. They want the best for you, but they're going to push you. And it definitely opened my eyes to, you know, a lot of different art genres and historical and other artists. And it's been a very positive experience for me. So, as I said, it's incredibly supportive and nurturing environment. And they actually refer to it as a community, which I think is really great for artists to get feedback. And then I think if you think about even what we're doing tonight, we're talking about art. I mean, we'll all go away and remember things about each other's practices, and it all helps to kind of grow what you're doing. And Terps also encourages that, which it's just a great philosophy, you know, to share and be generous with each other. And so yeah, I found it really positive experience. So.
And it's really accessible, so they run lots of different, like I did the correspondence course as well for 3 years. They also run these surgeries, they call them surgeries, once or twice a year. So if you were interested, it's a good idea to maybe do one of them. They do them online at the moment. Usually they will be in the gallery space. But yeah, I found it really, really positive. I mean, I would absolutely recommend it. It was, I feel a bit weirdly emotionally attached to it.
Yeah, they also have a publication which is excellent. If you want to just learn a bit about it, you can they self-publish their own periodical magazine, and those are great too. So if you want to just find out a bit more, maybe start there. Yeah. I feel like I'm running ads here for Terps.
They're doing the business. It's great. And Chanelle, you were there.
Yeah, I did it online for 2 years, and at the time I was living in the west of Ireland, and I felt a little isolated, like I wasn't really meeting very many artists. So for me, the interesting thing was actually having classmates, and we all kind of connected on email and Instagram, and just always kept in touch with each other. And some of them I chat to on the phone and stuff. So yeah, definitely it was like a sense of community. And then I found the tutorials with my personal tutors to be quite like oddly intimate, as in because I knew that this was just between me and them, I would kind of say whatever I wanted to say. I wasn't inhibited, and I did break through a few barriers, and I was challenged a lot as well. So it was good to just have that, because I had been painting on my own for, I think it was 8 years before I began, and I kind of had felt like I'd hit a bit of a block or something, and I just wanted like genuine, honest feedback from another painter. And there was a lot, it was kind of good just to absorb like different discussions about painting and kind of get to know painters who are from all different countries as well. Because in different countries they all kind of talk about painting in a different way. So it was just to be around that was kind of pretty interesting. So yeah, thank you. Okay.
It sounds like painter's utopia.
A dream, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lovely
If anyone has a warehouse
idea.
can we borrow it, please? Yeah. It is a good point. We need more spaces.
Sounds like some of those art foundations abroad, where the you know, it's done
Perhaps
properly.
they just have the funding and the backing.
And the
I think
heritage.
and the heritage.
Yeah.
And it's in the culture more.
We really need to nurture that here, and
We do.
yeah, I agree. Like I would love to see that happening in Ireland sooner rather than later, because you just wonder what will happen to, you know, certain generations coming up. You know, where we'll be left, because even collectors, you know, they're thinner on the ground now. I think there's certainly like a change in collecting. So yeah, it's plenty to be thinking about. You know, public venues are amazing, and they really do their best. You know, the tight budget. So if anyone knows a developer or an architect, please let me know. But thanks for everything.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we're
Thank
on
you.
a clock and we're not allowed to stay, so
Okay.
Thank you so much.
I'll
for
be
coming.
in trouble.
Thank you.
But mila buchas,
Thank you.
and the best of luck to the new director, Julie
Yeah.
Gallagher. So yeah, fingers crossed.
Yes.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.
Thanks all.